So it's been 7 years since we got a proper Metal Gear Solid sequel. And this game is massive, it's very important. I couldn't just talk about the game myself, so what did I do? I'm bringing in GameSpot's senior review editor, Peter Brown, who reviewed the game for GameSpot, to break it down and help me out. How are you, sir, Peter? Thanks for joining me.
I'm good, thanks for having me.
So in your review, you are saying that this is the best Metal Gear game ever. I mean, you gave it a 10. Let's put that out there.
Yeah.
Explain yourself. Why is this game so good? Why is Metal Gear Solid so freaking important?
I mean, the Metal Gear games have been important for various reasons over the years, but what's really interesting about this series is the legacy that it's sort of built up and the really passionate fan base. But those fans know sort of a type of game that Metal Gear has always been. It's always kind of been about sneaking around enclosed spaces and weaving your way through a really interesting and odd narrative. All of that is here except for the enclosed spaces part. Phantom Pain is a massive open world game, and that creates so many more possibilities when it comes to stealth and both action-based gameplay for the series.
So why, you know, obviously in this industry, when you give a game a 10, people turn their heads. It's, you know, it's definitely causes like a double take. Why does this one get the 10?
From the storytelling through the gameplay and all of its layers and forms, the game is, I mean, there's so many thoughtful touches everywhere and so many layers of depth to explore. I mean, everything you do, even just the act of running and looking around your environment, just feels really good. They have nailed so many aspects of this game that are often overlooked by other games. And that all ties into the gameplay that I was talking about earlier. So it's a very rewarding and fulfilling experience to play this game. And it's long and it's huge. I spent almost 50 hours in it, loved every minute of it for the most part, and I only completed 40% of the game. I mean, there's still so much more for me to take in. So it's the level of quality and it's the amount of time that you get to spend in that world doing new and interesting things.
That sounds pretty awesome. The last Metal Gear game I played was Metal Gear 4. That was like 7 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. 2008, I think.
So I remember I really liked that game, but the problem I had, and maybe it wasn't a problem, but just something I wasn't totally into, was the fact that the game took these really long cutscene breaks that kind of, you know, disrupted the flow of the game. How is that narrative storytelling addressed in Phantom Pain?
There are still plenty of cutscenes, but they are not as long and drawn out and frequent as they were in Metal Gear Solid 4. The series creator Hideo Kojima loves cinema, loves film, talks about it all the time, and it shows in his games. You could say maybe Metal Gear Solid 4 was evidence of his hubris when it came to being someone who is a film aficionado. But
yeah, like maybe that should have been a movie instead.
Yeah. But he's definitely pulled back a bit for this game. The cutscenes are less frequent. You see them, you know, at least the substantial ones, maybe every few hours. And even then, they're maybe 10 minutes long at the most. And then there are some smaller ones sort of peppered in there as you complete story missions that aren't as important. But the thing is that they're all done so much better than they were in Metal Gear Solid 4. The acting of the virtual characters, the voice acting of the voice actors, and the composition of the framing is phenomenal. And the story also is more cohesive and more understandable than I'd say Metal Gear Solid 4. That story, because that was built off a lot of history. And this game has that going into it as well, but it's also a really good self-contained story. So the cutscenes aren't as long and they're better.
Yeah, that was a big concern I also had, was like, you know, the epic storytelling is almost overwhelming in Metal Gear Solid 4, and it sounds like, judging from your review, that in 5, it's maybe broken down in a more sort of cohesive manner. So you're definitely, you know, reinforcing that. You're saying this is something that most people will be able to understand.
Yeah, it doesn't. The game doesn't start with a lot of backstory related to the series. I mean, it does give you a little bit of information so you have context, but it's not throwing these really obscure names and pseudonyms for people with other names into the mix and expecting you to get that off the bat. It tells a good self-contained story for the first 2/3, and then it sort of jumps into the legacy stuff when it comes to the story and tying that back in. Which is nice because it actually, I think, brings people in who are new to the series into that world of the history behind Big Boss, the main character, by giving them a story to relate to him with to begin with.
So you think it's definitely arguably the most accessible Metal Gear in some time?
From a story perspective, definitely. The gameplay is much more complex than past games in the series, and the controls definitely take some getting used to. But from a narrative standpoint, I think newcomers will be right at home.
So gameplay-wise, what exactly is different? Because I read your full review. There's a lot of it's open world essentially,
Yeah.
which is something Metal Gear loyalists probably aren't totally used to in the realm of that universe. How does that play out?
Well, it definitely changes how you approach a mission, because now threats can come from any angle, and they could before, but the thing is their vector might begin a mile away. Like a wild animal can disrupt your mission just as well as somebody that you're trying, like a guard at a base that you're trying to sneak past. So that changes the sort of approach you take when sneaking into something, such as a base or whatever. But the controls themselves, there's a lot of sort of combinations that you have to do with your hands, like hold R1, press in R3, and move it to the left.
Okay.
Those sort of things that you got to train your muscles a little bit to get used to it. But it's not a big hurdle. It's just one of those things that's a necessary evil, if you will.
Right on. All right, well, you've sold me on it. Thank you so much, Peter. Everyone, please go read the full review over at GameSpot. It's an excellent read. Peter Brown, thank you so much for being here, man.
Love to be on. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, that does it. Make sure you read Peter's full review over at GameSpot.com. We'll see you next time. I'm Jeff Bakalar. Thanks for watching.